In this presentation, we will understand how break and continue statements work. So without any further delay, let's get started. The first topic of this presentation is the break statement, and the second topic is the continue statement. We will first understand what is the break statement. So let's get started with this topic. So what is the break statement? We know already that the break statement is used to terminate the running loop. If we want to terminate the loop based on some other condition, then we can do that using the break statement. Now let's understand the use of break statement with the help of an example. Let's consider example number 1. Let's say that we want to print numbers from 0 to 50 on the screen. But there is one condition. We first need to generate the list of numbers from 0 to 99. Now it is up to you how you want to generate the list. You can generate the list manually by simply typing the numbers within the list, or there is one more way to generate the numbers. We know already that the range function allows us to generate numbers based on the arguments that we provide to it. If we provide the start and stop arguments to the range function, then the range function in that case will generate numbers from start to stop minus 1. And this is what we want. We want to generate numbers from 0 to 99, so we can provide 0 and 100 to the range function. Range function will generate those numbers, but there is one problem. We will never get a list from the range function. Therefore, we need list function in order to create the list. So we need to provide the range function as the argument to the list function. So this is how the line looks like. Numbers equal to list and then range 0, 100. This range function has the capability to generate numbers from 0 to 99, and these numbers are provided to the list function. List function will generate the list for us. And here this numbers variable is pointing to that list. I hope this is clear. Now after generating the list, our job is to print numbers from 0 to 50. This means we don't want to print the rest of the numbers after 50. For this purpose, we can use the for loop. This is how the for statement looks like. For number in numbers. We know how for works with the in keyword. This variable will hold numbers of this numbers list one by one. First it will receive 0, then it will receive 1, then 2, then 3, then 4 and so on. Now within this for loop, we need to check this condition. If number is greater than 50, if it is the case that number that we are receiving here is greater than 50, then in that case, break the loop. This means that break must be executed so that we can terminate this loop. Because we don't want to print numbers after 50. So when we receive 51 here in this number variable, then this becomes 51. 51 is greater than 50. Therefore, break statement is executed in that case. This means that the loop terminates immediately. If it is not the case, if number is not greater than 50, then in that case we must print that number. But we want to print numbers in the same line. We want that numbers must be separated by white spaces. Hence we need the second argument as well. We already know how this print function works. This second argument allows us to print numbers in the same line and they will be separated by white spaces, as we are providing a white space here within these single quotes. Now when we execute this code, we will get this output 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and so on up to 50. When we receive 51 here, then we know that this condition is satisfied, hence break statement is executed. This means that the loop terminates and this statement will never be executed. This means that we will never get numbers after 50. I hope this concept is completely clear. So the break statement is used to terminate the running loop. Now let's consider one more use case. Let's consider example number 2. We already know how infinite loop works. We have understood infinite while loop properly in our previous presentations. The infinite while loop is quite useful as well. We know that the condition of the infinite while loop is always true. This is the reason why it is called infinite while loop, because it never terminates normally. One way in which we can terminate the loop is to use the break statement. We might need infinite while loop in our programs when we don't know the termination criteria beforehand, and maybe the termination depends upon the user input. So let's say that the user has pressed Q. Then in that case we will terminate the loop. Otherwise we'll continue to run the loop. So this is one use case of the break statement. Now let's write the program for the same. Let's say we want to print the numbers which we receive from the user, but if the user provides Q in place of some number, then in that case we will stop the loop. So let's type the code for the same. Let's first create the infinite while loop. Let's type while true. We know this is infinite while loop because this is true and this remains true. This will never turn out to be false. Now within this while loop, we need this line to accept user input. Num equal to input, enter the number Q for quit. This prompt will be printed on the screen and user will provide the number after this. Or maybe user will provide Q to quit. So we are providing this choice also. Here the input function will receive the input and that input is provided to num. Now after this we need to check this condition. If num is equal to Q, if it is the case that the user input is Q, then we just break this loop or we just need to terminate this loop. If that's not the case, then we just need to print the number on the screen. So when we execute this code, the output that we will receive looks like this. Let's mimic the behavior of the user. First, the prompt is displayed. Enter the number Q for quit. Let's provide 10 here. As this is the number, this is not Q. Therefore, this break statement is not encountered. This print function will be executed. This means that this number will be printed on the screen when we press enter. After hitting enter, we'll get 10 on the screen and also we will see this prompt once again. Because after printing the number, this statement will be executed again. Now, let's enter 20. As soon as we press enter, we will get 20 as the result and then we will get enter the number Q for quit. This time let's enter Q. Now as soon as we hit enter, we will get outside of this while loop. Because the user input is Q, this means that this condition is satisfied. Hence the break statement is encountered. This means that the loop terminates. And this means that this print function is not executed. I hope this concept is now completely clear. So we now know when to use the break statement. Let's move on to the next topic, that is the continue statement. The continue statement is used to skip the current iteration of the loop. If we want to skip the current iteration of the loop, we can do that with the help of the continue statement. Now let's see how to use the continue statement with the help of some examples. Let's consider example number 1. Let's say that we want to print numbers 0, 1 and 3. There are many ways to print these numbers. One way is to use the for loop with range function. We can provide arguments to the range function and the range function will generate numbers 0, 1 and 3 for us. But the condition is that we cannot use more than one argument in the range function. This means that we are allowed to provide maximum to maximum one argument to the range function, which obviously represents the stop value. This means that we will get numbers from 0 to stop minus 1 from the range function. Let's say that to the range function we provide 5. Then we will get numbers from 0 to 4. This means we will get 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. But we want to print 0, 1 and 3. How to do this? Inside the for loop, we can check this condition. If the number that we receive from the range function is equal to 2 or 4, then we will continue. This means we will skip the current iteration and we will not print that number on the screen. So if we receive 2 or 4 from the range function, then we will not print that number. That is what I'm trying to say. Otherwise, we will print the number. So now let's write the code. For I in range 5, we know that this range function will return numbers 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. These numbers are received by this variable I one at a time. Now within this for loop, we want to check this condition if I is equal to 2 or I is equal to 4. Here we are using OR keyword, not AND. Because if any of these conditions are satisfied, then we must execute continue. This means that when continue is encountered, we'll get back to this line. The statements after continue will not be executed. So when we encounter continue, we will jump to this line, and this means we are now in the next iteration. So in this way, we can skip the current iteration. Otherwise, we will simply print the number on the screen. We know that for the first time, I will receive value 0. We know that 0 is not equal to 2 and it is not equal to 4. Therefore, these two conditions are not satisfied. Hence, continue statement is not executed. This means that this print function will be executed and 0 will be printed on the screen. After this, we will receive 1 here from the range function. Now, we know that these two conditions are not satisfied. Hence, continue statement is not executed. This means that this print function will be executed and this time 1 will be printed on the screen. After this, variable I will receive value 2. This condition is satisfied this time. Therefore, continue statement will be executed. And this means that we now need to jump to this line. I hope this is now clear. The print function in this case will not be executed. Hence, 2 will not be printed on the screen. After this, variable I will receive value 3. 3 will be printed. 4 will not be printed because this condition is satisfied. And in that case, continue statement will be executed. We'll get to the next iteration. We know that this time for loop terminates because range function will only generate numbers from 0 to 4. And 4 is the last number. So we will get this output 0, 1 and 3 on the screen. So I hope this example is completely clear. Let's consider one more example to concrete the concept of the continue statement. Let's say this time we want to print numbers 2, 4, 6, 8 and 10. And this time we are not allowed to use the for loop. So we can only use the while loop. In order to print numbers 2, 4, 6, 8 and 10, we first need to create a variable. Let's create variable n and let's initialize it to 0. Now the while condition looks like this, n less than or equal to 10. We want to print numbers up to 10. Let's not worry about skipping the numbers in between. At this point, we just need to worry about which is the last number that we want to print. The last number is 10. Hence the condition is n less than or equal to 10. If n is less than or equal to 10, then we will continue. Otherwise, we will terminate the loop. We know that n is 0, therefore this condition is satisfied. So we'll get inside this while loop. Inside this while loop, we will first increment the value of n. We'll increment the value of n by 1. So n is now holding value 1. Now after this, we need to check this condition. If n mod 2 is not equal to 0, then continue. Now what does this mean? We know that if n mod 2 is not equal to 0, then this means that n is not divisible by 2. If n is divisible by 2, then in that case n mod 2 must be equal to 0. We want to print numbers 2, 4, 6, 8 and 10. All are divisible by 2. On the other hand, numbers 1, 3, 5, 7 and 9 are not divisible by 2. So when n is equal to 1 or 3 or 5 or 7, then in that case this condition is satisfied. And because we don't want to print these numbers, we must execute continue statement. This means that we will jump to this line. And this means that we are now executing the next iteration. I hope this is clear. As we don't want to print 1, 3, 5, 7 and 9, that is why this condition is needed and this continue statement is needed. Now after this if check, we just want to execute this statement. We want this print function to be executed. Here we are providing these two arguments, n and end equal to these quotes with white space in between these quotes. So the number with white space will be printed on the screen. All numbers will be printed in the same line. Initially, we know that n is 0, therefore this condition is satisfied. N is incremented by 1, so n becomes 1. Now here we are checking this condition. We know that this condition is satisfied. Therefore, the continue statement is executed, and this means that we will get back to this line. This function is not executed. Therefore, 1 is not printed on the screen. Now here we are checking this condition. Is 1 less than or equal to 10? Yes. Therefore, n is incremented by 1. N becomes 2. Now again we are checking this condition. This time this condition is not satisfied. Therefore, continue statement is not executed. But this time print function is executed. Therefore, 2 along with the white space is printed on the screen. Then after this 4 will be printed, 6 will be printed, 8 will be printed, and 10 will be printed. Therefore, the output of this program is 2, 4, 6, 8 and 10. I hope this is clear. So this is the output that we are getting. So with this we are done with continue statement also. When we want to skip the current iteration, we can use the continue statement. Now I hope these two concepts are completely clear. This means that we are done with this lecture. Okay friends, this is it for now. Thank you for watching this presentation. I will see you in the next one.